Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a review of the latest Axxis album, Retrolution. Axxis can be considered a German power metal institution, or I guess a dinosaur, depending on your perspective, because this German group was founded in 1988. Yes, when these guys started making music, the Berlin Wall was still standing, and unlike the Berlin Wall, they are still here. Retrolution is their 14th full-length studio album. Let's take a look at it, shall we? I know Axxis for quite a while now. I basically got into them in the midst of their career, and my first conscious contact with them was their work from 2004, an album called Time Machine. Never really followed the band intensively, but I really liked that album, and generally speaking, Axxis make the same music still. The sort of rockish kind of power metal, a bit whimsical with their melodies, drums, and exclusively clean vocals, all packed into mid-tempo tracks. And yet, I found Retrolution ultimately lacking. I don't know if the mixture just doesn't resonate with me anymore as much, or if the compositions really did become simpler, more samey, the vocals thinner, and some of the lyrics simply downright dreadful. Especially the sameness is something that I felt strike really strong on this particular album. At some point I really couldn't tell when the album ended and started playing over again. I know I have a tendency of speaking from tracks bleeding together when there is what I feel too little variation in how the songs sound, but Retrolution is really taking it up a notch here. The only track that really stood out to me is the balladesque Queen of the Wind, which mostly dominated by a single guitar. But even here the band just couldn't resist to throw some kitschy e-guitar riffs in at the end. I won't lie, when this track came on, I was honestly just wishing to listen to Bart's song from Blind Guardian, which, yeah, I know it's an unfair comparison. That is not to say that the album is necessarily outright bad. When it comes to their mixture of rock and power metal, Axxis still managed to deliver pretty well-crafted music. But there is simply not much on this album that is really great or that interesting either. And I think that would only be half as bad if the album had some oomph behind it, so to say, but it just sounds flat and completely colorless. The sound lacks power and some good old pressure behind it. Even the faster, a bit harder tracks won't blow any dust off your speakers, which honestly is a crying shame. It's also not like the topics of the tracks, at least some of them, wouldn't be predestined to something a bit different with your compositions. The biggest loser here is possibly Seven Devils, which paints this picture of a rough and dirty western in your mind through its lyrics, but then ends up to be the same power metal rock mixture you get presented with for the rest of the album. Not even a trace of western feel through means of the composition of the music itself, or really anything different for that matter. Instead, variety is relegated to a few seconds here and there. The initial melody of Seven Devils sounds surprisingly new metalish, like it could come straight from an old Linkin Park album. The song All My Friends Are Liars starts out with this sort of ticking electric noise. Or how Dream Chaser opens up with a synthy melody. It's not like Axxis can't do varied music, but for some reason they decided simply to, well, don't do it. Things like a synthy-dominant melody is just used for a short intro piece and then drowned out by guitars and drums for the rest of the track. And the songs could have really used a bit more of variety to stand apart from each other here. That said, if you dig what Axxis dish you up here in the first place, this album is a piece of heaven for you. As I said, it's not necessarily a bad album, just a stale one. The band is experienced, they know how to play their instruments, and vocalist Bernhard Weiss still manages to hit his iconic pitch pretty damn well. And if you listen to one of the tracks and think to yourself, you know what, I would love 45 minutes of this, then Retrolution will make you very happy indeed. But I found myself ultimately bored by it. It just feels like they wanted to play it really safe and overdid it in the process. So, as a conclusion here, Axxis can deliver better. They have delivered far better before, and I hope they deliver better in future again. Even compared to their own discography, Retrolution comes off a bit dull, monotonous, and thanks to the mix also really flat on top of that. If you like the sound they deliver here, you will probably love this album. But if you're looking for a good, varied album, better go back a few years into the band's own history, because you can simply find far better albums there which follow the same basic recipe. While all the instruments are played competently and the vocals are delivered as good as usual, Axxis was probably never more boring than on this album. So, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please feel free to leave a like or just subscribe to the channel for more German music stuff. You can also follow Sounds German on Twitter or Facebook. Links are in the description. I do regularly post new music videos, English interviews with German, Austrian, Swiss artists there, etc. If you listen to the album, please feel free to leave a comment and tell me what you thought of it. And thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again next time. Salida!